Hi, I'm Jaymie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the Body Smart Podcast.
We are women's weight loss experts on a mission to empower you to feel permanently in control of your weight and your health. And after working with literally thousands of women between us, we know that the majority of the time, it's not actually what you're eating or how you're exercising that stops you doing that, like feeling in control of your weight or your health. It's what's in your head. And so today we have got our head coach, Terry Anderson, with us. It's a bit of a mindset ninja. He'll just like stealthily get in your head and plant these little sentences or questions that will make you rethink perhaps some of the things that have been holding you back. And one of the things we really wanted to talk about today is this cycle that people get in so often where they feel in control, they're doing all the right things, and then something happens and before you know it, you're back to square one. And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably experienced it once or more than once. So we are going to talk about today why it happens and what you can do so that you're not keeping going round and round in that cycle. You can actually just do this once and for all. So Terry, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Fourth time on the podcast.
Fourth time. Yeah. It's been over a couple of years. The studio looks way nicer now, more kit. It's good.
Well, we just thought this is something that we see again and again, not only with people who are listening to the podcast or reach out to us on social media, but even with our own clients. People get so far and then they stop. So what's your experience of working with clients and this happening?
Yeah, it's something we deal with in the coaching team a lot. I've seen it in my own coaching over the years, but now on a bigger scale with the whole team, it's something which we're always constantly trying to educate the clients about from day one that they're with us, but it doesn't stop it happening. And no matter how much we try and speak to them or educate them or, be that little kind of person on the shoulder when they need it most, it still happens. And I think ultimately it is education. It is understanding that having confidence in the coaches and what we're delivering here, either on the podcast or in our classroom or whatever we're doing, it's what we're saying is for the client's best benefit. So if we're saying you're not done yet, or you need to keep going because this isn't something which is going to last. If you step away now, then that's why we want to educate the clients, because it's super important that it literally kills me when I see someone stepping away when they're feeling great, but I know what's around the corner. Mm-hmm. Oh, it kills me.
So could you give me like an example or examples of this happening then with clients? Like what does that typical journey look like?
So we will typically see someone come in, let's just say they have like 40 pounds to lose and they're absolutely crushing it. They've had this like perfect weight loss journey. They're like, say, 30 pounds down and they are like feeling on top of the world. They've got Christmas parties coming up. They've bought dresses. They're feeling like awesome. And you don't want to like pull them down a peg because they're feeling great. And you're like, this is amazing to see. But you understand that this is something which, if they don't do this last little bit, if they don't get to their goal, if they don't learn how to reverse that, learn how to maintain, this is only temporary. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it's a really difficult conversation to have with the client because they are feeling like unbreakable and they're feeling incredible. And it's a really difficult place to challenge them because they'll feel like, no, like I've got this, like I've done this now for X amount of months, because 30 pounds might take a little while for them to do it. And they've been doing this for a while. They're like, no, I've done this. Like I've got it now. I've got like 3, 4, 5 months in the bag. I can do this. And it's a really difficult place for us to, hey, no, because sometimes the clients will get their backs up a little bit and they'll be like, they'll challenge us back. But we've just seen it so many times.
Losing. I mean, most of our clients would relate with this, like losing weight. Okay, maybe it's had its challenges, but most of our clients haven't struggled to lose weight. They actually know how to lose weight, and I've done many diets in the past, and I've done Body Smart, and I've been able to lose weight. It's sustaining and maintaining the weight that they've lost, which is the hard part, and I think that's the difficult part, isn't it? Like if you see really great results, well, everything's like you're ticking all the boxes, you're exercising well, you're eating well, you're seeing results, you're feeling great, which is great. Like there's a reason you're feeling great. It's off the actions that you're taking on a consistent basis, but it's everything else that's to come after that. It's to sustain and maintain it for the not just for the years, but for the rest of your life. Like, no, we
Yeah.
always say this: nobody wants to lose that 30 pounds to gain it back, to lose it again, to gain it back, to lose it again. It's a
I
vicious
think it's
cycle.
really key what you said there, though, about like the last £10, because I can't even keep track of how many women I've had that conversation with. I always get within like £5 or £10 of my goal, and then it's like no more will come off. Doesn't matter what I do, and it's either that or they go, oh well, you know, this is actually, I feel pretty good. Like maybe I don't need to go that last £10. Maybe that's enough. So there's two different scenarios there, and they have two different root causes. And I wanted to talk about the first one first. So that idea of like, I got within £10 of my goal, but then everything stops. Why does that happen?
Yeah, so typically what we see is like the main reason why this happens is physiologically there are changes going on. So your body is like metabolically adapting all the time. The kind of research would suggest that for every pound of weight you lose, your BMI, the amount of calories you burn at rest, will decrease by around 10 calories. But your appetite per day, yeah. But your appetite, like conversely, will increase by around 50 calories. So if you imagine 10 pounds of weight loss, you're going to get 100 calories a day less in terms of what you're burning. So you're doing exactly the same as what you were doing before, but you're actually burning less energy now because you're a smaller person. But you're 500 calories more hungry, like appetite is there. So it's this inverse relationship of like, well, I'm getting closer to my goal, I'm losing weight, but I'm burning less energy, but man, I want to eat the roof off. Like I just want to eat everything in sight. And that's typically why you get 6 months down the line of a weight loss journey and it's like you're fighting that too much and it just stops. Mm-hmm. You either like quit, or if you're even in your coaching, you know, people will struggle in coaching, but we have things that we'll implement to strategies and ways to get around those obstacles to allow you to get through that 10 pounds. But that's the main like reason why. But this is all happening unconsciously. You're going to have psychological adaptations like choosing to park closer to work, you know, taking a lift instead of the stairs. That kind of thing is all happening as well. And eventually it's just like a recipe for not losing that last 10 pounds.
Yeah, which is what your body's trying to do, because
Yeah.
your body said, oh, seems like there's a bit of a famine going on. We should adjust to this so that we don't die. It's being quite helpful.
Yeah. It literally helps us when we need it most. But unfortunately, when you're in a weight loss journey, you've got a lot of weight to lose, it just makes it more difficult.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
inbuilt system for a couple of 100 years ago, not for 2024, where, you know, people are struggling to lose weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those systems aren't necessarily serving us in the same way.
Yeah, and that's just the physiological. And then I do think there's a huge psychological aspect to it of why it all seems to stop £10, £5 to go. And actually, we had a great Body Smart grad on, Laura. She said she had this exact same scenario where she got to the weight that she thought was possible for her. And she didn't change anything, but everything stopped. So consciously, she didn't change anything, but subconsciously, she realised, like, she had a chat with her coach and she was like, you know what, I must be self-sabotaging. It must be this limiting belief that, like, this is all I could ever achieve. My brain's trying to prove me right, you know? Like, this is what I've held on to all this time. And if I keep trying and I fail, that's going to feel worse than just saying, well, I know I can only get to this weight and I got to that weight and that's what happens. So that is another huge element that is so much more powerful than I think people realise.
Yeah, like the limiting belief side of things, we'll see that like throughout someone's journey quite regularly. Like it'll be, you know, can't get below 200 pounds, and then it's like we get through that barrier eventually, and then it's like, okay, now I can't get to 190. And when it gets down to that last £5, whatever it is this like belief that like I'm a dieter, I've always been a dieter, I'm not a healthy fit person, and all of these identity shifts are coming into play, and you're just around a corner from a complete like unknown. All you do know how is to diet. You know how to, you know, cut your calories. You know how to do X, Y, and Z to lose weight, but you don't know how to live in abundance, in happiness, in, you know, like in fitness. And that is sometimes a scary place to be for someone. And so they'll do what they can, that maybe unconsciously or consciously, to just stay just at the other side of that where they're feeling good, but they're not like having to deal with what's around the corner because
Whole
it's an
new
unknown.
life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I'd say, well, beliefs are super powerful. So I reckon beliefs play a huge part in that. And then I feel like there's the two other parts from a psychological element. There can be friends, family, colleagues who kind of put you down. Oh, you don't need to lose any more weight. Oh, you look great the way you are. Oh, if you lose any more weight, you're going to waste away. And it's just like,
or you're looking a bit gaunt.
yeah. And then the other part is maybe you've set a weight loss goal to get to and you're 10 pounds away from this, but you actually feel great right now. So the necessity to actually push that last 10 pounds just isn't there. And sometimes that just means like reevaluating what your goals are. But like the worst part would be getting stuck there, like not having a necessity, wanting to lose 10 pounds more, but actually you don't really want to lose 10 pounds more because you've stopped making as much effort as you did when you had that 40 pounds to lose.
It's one question that I used to use it all the time in coaching, and I actually had a conversation with the coaches on a team meeting the other day about this, and I'm like, you can ask all of these, curious questions to really try and understand where the client's coming from and what's going on, but like this killer question that I just love is, are you happy? And when someone is just like seemingly doing everything, you've gone through like the coaching book and you're like, can't really work it out. If they come back and like, yeah, I'm happy. It's like, well, that's where the comfortable complacency is coming from, because they've got to like 8 or 9 out of 10 in terms of happiness. And that's where the complacency comes in of like, oh, I'll just have that over there, have that little lick, bite, taste, whatever it is, or not get up for that workout in the morning. And all of a sudden, that's where it stalls. But it's coming from a good place. But it's the most frustrating thing for a coach, because it's like, we're so close to like what you don't even know it would feel like because that next 5-10 pounds, or even just getting to the other side and maintaining and not having to track your food and things like this, like you don't even know what that feels like. And if you feel good now, like imagine what 11 out of 10 feels like.
Yeah, you have to literally create deprivation, and that's the best way to create necessity is to create deprivation. So, and that's difficult if you've based your motivation to lose weight off maybe pain, and the deprivation feels like, well, none of my clothes fit, and I feel horrible, and I've got poor energy, and I've got really bad digestion, and all of that kind of goes away through the journey of losing 30 pounds and getting healthier habits. Like the same drivers aren't there, the same deprivation isn't there to get that last 10 pounds. And I'm not I've never been like, we can move the goalposts, but sometimes I will try and push a client as well. It's like, hey, like healthy weight here, or if we're carrying maybe some excessive belly fat, like, okay, let's just try and unpick that a little bit more. What does that excess belly fat lead to? Hey, well, it can really lead to negative health outcomes over the course of your lifetime. So let's create some deprivation there of like, this is negative and you're already in it and doing the work. Like, let's just push through, keep that day one motivation, and really just get that last 5 or 10 pounds off.
I think that's a really interesting point that we haven't even touched on. Like, where did that original goal even come from? Because a lot of clients I've worked with, they don't even know what to set as a goal. So they look at like maybe a BMI target and go, right, what would get me into healthy? And so they pick like the highest weight that would put them in the healthy range as their goal. And so actually if they're 10 pounds away, they're still feeling so much better than when they started. And they are healthier than when they started. But they're actually forgotten that still hasn't quite tipped them into where they wanted to be in terms of why they picked that number. And like you said, there might be other bits going on as to why doing that last little bit, it's not necessarily even about how your clothes fit or how energetic you feel. Like, yes, those are super important, but there's a reason you may have set that goal in the first place. So revisiting at this point is really helpful.
I feel like there's so many hurdles that can trip you up here as well. So like, you've got the physiological sides of like metabolic adaptation and metabolism slowing down and hunger going up. And then you've got like the social pressures of everyone telling you you're doing really well, and that kind of gets in your head. But then, just like you might not actually fully know what that goal is as well, and be able to create that deprivation, because it's difficult, isn't it? If everyone's telling you you're doing well, you also look and feel great. Like, of course, that comfortable complacency is going to start to kick in, but then the trap to that is, and we've just seen this, still wanting that bit more, still wanting that 5 or 10 pounds more, and never getting it, and then like you kind of stay like, oh, I'm happy, but I'm not quite happy. I wish I could just get a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard to admit to yourself that that's where you are. I think it does require a coach to ask a lot of questions, because it's easier to just go, no, I am actually happy here. and just ignore that little voice that's deep down saying, maybe there is more though. Because the actual, like, what's that word? Like diminishing returns of the work you'd have to put in to get you to that final goal just maybe doesn't feel quite worth it until you have that deeper conversation with a coach or with someone outside of the situation.
And we'll break that down for our clients. So we'll use, like, we call it the cost of getting lean. So it's what is it going to take to maintain this at this point in your life? And would that look like happiness to you? Would that look like something that feels like a great life? Or what would it look like going to that next 5 to 10 pounds? And is that something that then is sustainable? And typically, it's not going to be a huge difference. But when you're getting to that very lean end of the scale, it is. Because that 5 to 10 pounds is going to require a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of no's in social situations to get to that place. Most of our clients don't necessarily need to get to that, but it's the choices that, okay, well, what does that next £10 look like or £5 look like? And am I willing to do the things that are required to get there? And will I be happier there?
Yeah. And also maybe revisiting what your goals are. Because actually, if you are in a healthy weight range and you do feel good, maybe your focus and your why has shifted even through the journey. And now you're like, do you know what? I just want to get super strong. And I want to have this relationship with food where I don't have to stress about it. And that is your focus now. And that's okay too.
I think another one could be as well, because I've seen this in the past where I've had clients set goals that were like, hey, I want to lose 40 pounds. You know, so they've gone from maybe like 220 to like 180. And that was a weight that they were like 15 years ago. So they set that as a goal. And that's like a weight that they remember feeling better at, but maybe wasn't still healthy, you know, and it's not for us to fully decide. We can obviously say, hey, well, you know, maybe we're still 20 pounds overweight from a healthy weight. And because of that, we're going to carry excess belly fat, and that's going to increase the likelihood of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, you know, and like, again, try and a coach ask the right questions to maybe create that little bit of deprivation and then necessity to be like, oh, okay, I do want to push on more. Maybe 180 was a great goal for me to get to, and I should give myself a pat on the back, but maybe I need to push a little bit more here and get to, you know, what's going to be truly healthy and sustainable for me.
So Terry, have you got some questions that you would typically ask a client to like journal around or have a conversation around at this point to help them get to the root of what they actually want?
We'll typically we'll go through like what it would typically look like, and then ask them like, are they on a scale of 1 to 10, are they willing to do that thing? So it might be like, okay, are you willing to only drink at maybe like one occasion a month because you're going to have to, you know, cut back on that, for example. It might be just, okay, what does it look like to train? Are you willing to go to 4 or 5 days a week instead of 3? Yeah. So it's kind of like those kind of systematic questions, but it's then just that gauge of like happiness. I just love a scale of 1 to 10. I use it all the time. And, you know, unless I'm getting 8s or 9s, like, well, 9s or 10s actually, I'm like, I don't believe you. Or there's more that we can do here. So if someone's giving me a 7, I'm like, I see that as like a 2. I'm like, let's go. If someone's 9 or 10, like, I'll still get curious and be like, what's the difference between a 9 and a 10? Like, I really want to understand this, because, and this is kind of what I would help the coaches is ask, because you can go, everyone's different, and what their happiness looks like is different. So we just want to understand like the things, and as you grow in that client relationship, you'll understand like, this thing's important to them or that thing's important to them. Okay, so where are we at on this? Like, let's gauge this in a 1 to 10, and if I'm not getting a 9 or a 10, like, I want to know why and what do we have to do to get there? And then that's where you can go, okay, well, the next step for you is probably going to look like this. Mm-hmm. We would call it like profiling as well, where we would say, okay, right, the next steps could look like this. You either can up your exercise to this, and we can tweak your calories to here, and you're probably going to need to do this for a little bit longer, and we'll get to your goal by this date. Or we could tweak it this way, and then give like a few options of what that could look like. And then the client's empowered to go, well, I think I could do this one. Let's give this a go. And, you know, through trial and error, sometimes you'll see like maybe there's a step too far, and like, okay, well, this is actually where I'm good, because I just can't commit to those things. But more often than not, the client starts to see that they're capable of way more than what they think.
Yeah, and I think it is that breaking through where you thought you could get to that is so life-changing in the psychological side, isn't it? It's when people have always had that set point that they thought they could get to, and then just a little tiny bit extra gets them further. Then that's when it opens doors in other parts of your life where you think, if I did a tiny little bit extra at work, what would happen? If I did a tiny little bit extra here, what would happen? So yeah, it's really powerful. We have talked a little bit here about the extra pains maybe it would take to get those last 10 pounds, and it does feel harder, those last 10 pounds. We've talked about the psychological, the physiological, but I also wanted to just go through, if you had like a hit list, which I know you will have, if you've got a client who's like, I'm 10 pounds away, nothing's working anymore, what are the first things you're going to be going and looking at and checking?
Tracking, 100%. Like, first and foremost, it pretty much always comes down to that. Sometimes it will be, like I mentioned before, about the kind of adaptation. Sometimes clients are in a place where they've lost a lot of weight and there is actually a small window of error. And when you chuck in things like food labels can be 20% out, and your TD...
Which most people don't realise that, like food labels.
No, they're actually allowed to be 20% out.
So, like, just looking at the numbers alone, like, I'll give an example. So let's just say somebody's BMR is like 1,300. Their estimated energy expenditure is like 1,800. But food labels can be, and like the client thinks they're tracking at like 1,400. Okay, so they're in a pretty good deficit, but food labels can be 20% out. So that client could be tracking somewhere around 250, or they could be tracking around 1,550, right? And then, so all of a sudden, 1,550 to 1,800 is now 250 calorie deficit.
Yeah.
So that's half of what you pretty much thought you were. The TDE, although it's typically around 95% accurate in the way that we track it for our clients, there's margin of error there.
What your body burns every day.
Yeah, that's the total energy you'll burn.
So TDE is total daily energy expenditure.
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. The total energy you'll expend in a day through all of your movement, all your activity, and everything, including your BMR as well, what you burn at rest. So that can still be a little bit out. So if, let's just say that's like 100 calories out of where it could be. All of a sudden, you're at 100 and 150 calories when you're tracking 100% accurate. So we're aware of this as a coach, and we'll be looking to dive into is the client falling like victim to this because they really are trying their hardest, and we need to then just try and get a little bit more accurate or try and create a slightly bigger gap so that we start to see more consistent weight loss, because at 150 calories it's going to take quite a long time to see 1 pound of weight loss.
Huge.
Yeah,
and I think your
like
body
weeks.
can
your
body can really metabolically adapt to such a small deficit as well. So sometimes it can feel like you've completely plateaued. So yeah.
And so in that scenario, what kind of steps would you take with a client to just really make sure you're still seeing that 400 or 500 calorie a day deficit?
So just making sure, like, are they still doing everything like with their activity? Has anything changed? Are they, make sure that they are still doing what they were doing before, and that their energy hasn't dropped at all on that front. Really just have that conversation with them will allow them to realize that they need to be as accurate as possible to give themselves the best chance. So making sure that, if there's anything where it hasn't been tracked properly, or maybe a little bit of that comfortable complacency's crept in and the bites, licks and tastes are sneaking in there as well. Unfortunately, at that point of the journey, like, that's where they count the most. So it's just having that conversation, and it's difficult because this is where it can challenge a client the most, but they would have already been doing this stuff, and it's just maybe just got a little bit slack because they're feeling better, they're feeling comfortable. But if we just dial those things in, you will be able to create, and your coach, every one of the coaches at Body Smart is like well aware of this situation, and they're looking out for it for when it happens, because then that way we can create the best gap we can. And sometimes that's not 500 calorie a day. Sometimes it is like, we're in about a 300 calorie window here. It's going to take us a little bit longer to push through this last couple of pounds. But if we stay consistent, you're not like a genetic anomaly. This will happen for you. Like, you're going to get there. And so it's just like reassurance, showing them and educating them that it's not their fault necessarily that this is happening, but it partly will become their fault if they start to fall victim to, I just can't get past this.
Yeah. I think one of the most common things that I see at that point is, as well, you've been doing it so long, and you have your same breakfast every day, and you have like your certain things every day. So you start eyeballing things.
Yeah.
You start not pre-planning, not pre-tracking, because you've got this, like, you can wing it to a certain extent. And you can to a certain extent, but like you said, if there's that little bit of margin of error at this point, and you're actually pouring out 50 grams of cereal instead of 40 grams every day, like that soon adds up.
Yeah.
So really bringing it back to basics is super helpful for me at this point. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was you said about food labels and how they can be out. Really simplifying your diet at this point can be really helpful, I found. So if you've got to the point where you're really confident with like cooking complex recipes and like tracking them all and like all the different bits, which can take a while to get that level of confidence with tracking, actually just saying I'm going to eat really simple foods for a couple of weeks that I know I can literally just weigh like the 4 ingredients and be on it. It just gets this phase done. It can feel sometimes like, oh, why am I going back to that again? But it's either that or, like you said, really quite slow progress that still feels almost as much work. So it's like, well, it's your choice. You can do like 80% effort and it will take 6 weeks, or we can go like 100% effort and it could take like 3 weeks. So yeah, it's always a balance, isn't it?
Dialing back the ingredients, I think, because then we always say about controllable and controllables. If you know food packaging labels can be off by 20%, but then you're just getting chicken and cooking it and weighing it, then you're going to be able to get that 100% accurate because you're weighing the raw amount of food or the cooked amount of food, whichever way you're going. So if you dial back the ingredients, you can literally control that. And that's what I bring them up a lot, but bodybuilders you always see it as the extreme. So in the off season for a bodybuilder, they're still very mindful of what they're eating and what they're doing, but there's a little bit more time to be loose because they're just trying to either gain a bit of weight or maintain or put on some size. So they'll have sauces and more ingredients and more different foods. But as soon as it comes down for them dieting for a show, it's just like, right, all of that is gone.
Strip it back.
They just strip back to the basics, control the controllables. That we know if we have this amount of this and this amount of that, then we're going to be able to control the controllables and get consistent progress right the way through.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're listening to this and it's like the first episode you've listened to, don't worry, that's not what we expect you to eat like.
Yeah, I literally I'm like, I know what clients say to this as well. They're like, well, I don't want to count every calorie. I don't want to be like a bodybuilder. I don't want to do this. I'm like, but it's not. Like, this is a season of life, and this is only like a small season in the season
Super short.
And it's like, it's just doing what we need to get to the goal, and when we can then reverse that, and when we can add calories back in, and when we can learn the intuitive side of things a bit more, it looks a whole lot better. But without doing this part here, you're never going to know what you're going to be capable of. You're never going to know what it feels like to be the best you can be, and you're just going to leave yourself short. It's not where you want to be.
I think that's really interesting that you brought up the reverse diet bit, because I also don't think a lot of people look past the goal. So we're like, okay, now you've got to only have chicken and broccoli and weigh everything. And that's like in their head, that's forevermore. Yeah. That's not what we're saying. We're saying like for the 3, 5, 7 weeks or whatever it takes to get you those last couple pounds. And then we start adding some more food, and like we start like not just a small amount of food, like an extra 500 calories a day probably is where we're going to get to, which is a lot when you've been eating in a deficit for a while.
I think the other part of that as well, because I've seen this with clients, is you don't get to put the dieting mindset behind you. So if you've got, say you're on like 1,400 calories or 1,300 calories, and I had this with a client and I had to do this, really push through. She just got to a weight 10 pounds heavier than she wanted to actually be. I was on about 1350. And then, so she wasn't eating 1350. Like, I was like, Rachel, you're probably eating closer to like 1,900 calories. She's like, I'm not eating 1300. I was like, look, when you were eating 1,300 calories, we were losing consistently. And then it stayed there for like, and it took me like 6 months to actually just break this down. But there's so many clients I know who believe they're on 1,300 calories, believe they're still trying to lose weight and in that dieting mindset. And if like you listen to any of the grad episodes we've had, they've gone through that weight loss phase, fat loss phase, gone out with the dieting mindset, reverse dieted all those extra calories, 1,800, 1,900, 2,000 plus calories a day. And now they're in abundance mindset. Oh, I can eat as, I feel like I can eat as much as I want. I'm trying to build strength. I'm trying to get fitter. And the quote unquote dieting is like left.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like it's a bit of a sad place to be stuck. You know what I mean? Being that close to your goal and still feel like you've got to diet.
Yeah.
It's a huge mindset shift.
And it's also that like reinforcing nothing actually works. Like, I'm only eating this much and I'm not losing weight. which is why we don't really let clients do that. So we'll show you the evidence until we're blue in the face of like what's actually happening. But if you're listening along and you are in that scenario and you haven't got a coach, then the things we've just talked about will be super helpful. So like stripping it back, really checking your bites, licks, taste, like those little bits that add up when you're cooking, maybe a little grated cheese here, little few nuts there. And yeah, just making sure that your activity level can really catch you out, can't it? I've had so many clients who maybe when they start, they're like checking their watch every day and they're like, I'm going to get my 10,000 steps. And then things start to slow down. They don't check those things every day anymore. When we go in and look, they're like, oh my God, I'm only doing 6,000 steps. I didn't even know. And it just happens without you knowing because your body's trying so hard to save energy. So if you haven't got a coach who's going to like present you with the evidence, then definitely go looking for it yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Like we always know that next question. I always know the next thing that the client's going to say. Yeah, but what about this? And it's just the fact that, especially at Body Smart, it's hard to become a coach at Body Smart. We're not just a coach. It's a very well qualified, a very well experienced coach that you've got as part of your team, and they've done it 1,000 times. So we know how to get around these obstacles. We know things better than what you do, and it's not to kind of be like, you know, listen to me, like you got to do everything I say. It's nothing like that. Like we're on your team. We want to make sure that, you know, whether you're a client who's listened to this, who's not, or a person who's not coming on board yet, or whether you're a client who's with us already, we're on your team. And believe it or not, the coaches want this as bad, if not more than you do as well, because a lot of the time they literally have a deep core passion of wanting to see you get to your goal. And they're not, but they also have their own targets, right? So they don't like failing or anything like that as well. So like they're not going to do something or suggest something that's going to be worse for you or keep you in that longer than you need to be. So definitely for like anything that you're hearing in advice, like it's worth just taking it on and going, okay, well, maybe I need to get curious here. Like I believe I'm tracking correct. I believe I'm moving the same, but am I? Like, let's just dial this back and try and go really diligent for like a couple of weeks, see what happens, and just measure it. What gets measured gets managed.
If you didn't know, I am a weight loss coach, but I've also lost over 50 pounds myself, so I do know how hard this journey can be. Jaymie and I built the Body Smart method to cut through all the BS out there and bring together the latest weight loss science to fast track your weight loss. None of the frustrating trial and error that I battled with myself. Over 4,000 women have lost 15 to 60 pounds within 6 months with us, whilst also gaining healthy habits, skills, and knowledge, which mean they'll never have to diet again. Now, we know that you have thrown hundreds, if not thousands of dollars at this before and been disappointed endless times. So at Body Smart, we are so confident that you'll get results with our method. We have a full money back guarantee. To apply to work with one of our expert one-on-one coaches, go to bodysmartfitness.com. I think what's really interesting, I've had some really nice chats with some graduates recently, and a couple of them have said, you know, I really hate it, but when I see my weight starting to creep up, I do know, I just have to go and check these 4 things, and what a surprise. Like, I haven't been tracking this, or I realized I was having an extra coffee here. And when you know the process and you trust the process because you've been through this, and actually it's a good thing to say, going through this is helpful. Like, if it was a breeze, you'd never have to learn these things. But those grads that have been through it, they now have this little checklist. So 2 years down the line, even, they can go, my weight's creeping up. Well, I can probably put money on one of the 4 things it's going to be, so let me go check. And then they're in control. Like, they can literally go check, find out what it is, do something about it, and bam, they're back to where they want it to be. So it is also part of the learning journey, like doing this work. It's work, but it's got longer term payoffs as well. Yeah,
for sure. It's, and I don't want to butcher whoever did this model, but it's the model where any learning journey has, you start off and you're unconsciously incompetent. You'll then become consciously incompetent. So you know you're not very good at something. The first stage is like, I don't really know, I'm not good at this. Then you become like, oh, okay, I kind of understand that I'm not good at this thing. Then you start to get better at it. So you become consciously competent. Wow, this is a tongue twister. So consciously competent. So you start to go, I know I'm getting better at this. And this can be a really dangerous place to be honest. But once you move past that and you do that final piece of the journey that we're talking about, you'll get to a place where you're unconsciously competent. Now, this is the type of place where you don't even have to think about it. You've got that like user manual down. You know that like, okay, if something starts to change, you can go dial in to those 4 things that you need to. But most of the time, you're not even aware that you are living your life and maintaining your weight and living healthy and fit because you've done those 4 stages of change. But if you don't get through to that last stage, you can fall prey to a lot of problems.
Should we like this? Like, I think going into detail around what that actually looks like as well would be helpful because, you know, getting to that point of consciously competent. Is that right? Is that the last one?
Well, the end goal that we're aiming for is unconsciously competent.
Yeah. So like that, but if you look at that, that's a full-blown identity shift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, to have made that change, which doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But like, so maybe we can all just give like some personal examples. Like, I don't think about needing to exercise anymore. I just do exercise on a regular basis. Like, I don't think about like how many calories I'm eating each day. I just kind of mindfully, intuitively know. And probably the one thing is like, if I'm traveling, I have to think a little bit more about like getting my protein intake in.
Yeah.
Going out and eating for food, I just eat a little bit less the next day. I don't.
But not because you feel you have to. You just aren't as hungry.
Yeah, just maybe just not as hungry. Or if I literally went for like 3 courses and a dessert and something else, I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll eat a little bit less the next day. You know, it just depends. But like, none of it's stressful anymore, at least, and requires like much like mental like gymnastics or energy. It's like that. So like that's for me is like to the point. It's just like, oh, keeping on top of my health now is just something I do, and it's who I am, and it's everyone else knows that's who I am, and it's also not hard either.
I think something that really brought it home for me is when Steph and I were recording the pregnancy episode, and we were talking about, you know, gaining weight, and we've both gained weight, but we've been through weight loss journeys, both of us ourselves, and we have that unconscious competence where both of us were like, yeah, actually, I'm not worried about needing to lose 20 pounds, 40 pounds, because I know when I go back to my normal life and there's not like a whole human growing inside me and my hormones aren't wild, like I will just know what's going to feel good and I'm going to go back to what I did and it's all going to slot back into place. And that can sound a bit arrogant, but I that's literally all I did last time when I had Nate. I didn't diet once. I didn't track my calories once. I didn't do anything intentional. I just carried on living like I'd live. And
it's a big James Clear quote, isn't it? Which I think I've said a few times. Like, we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. Your systems and education around everything that you've got is just you being a fit and healthy individual. So when you're able to put those systems back in place postpartum, you just naturally go back to the version of Stacey that you've always been. And
well, not always, and that's the thing.
Not always, yeah.
And I think that's a really important part of this journey is it can be a time when if you haven't completed all of those 4 steps, you go like snakes and ladders back to the beginning. Because your habits and your systems haven't always been healthy. And so you haven't reached that point where it is your default setting. So the sliding back to normal can be the old normal.
And I guess as well, because we always talk about it being like health is a forever game. Having something like a kid, those systems that worked previously.
Oh yeah, they get completely fucked up.
Yeah. So but having the mindset of like, well, okay, I need to adapt and pivot and change is a skill in itself to make sure that you continue to prioritize.
But
your
your values and your like what you know your body needs doesn't change. And so for me, it wasn't like, oh, I can't do my same exact routine. And so that's going to hold me back. It was still like, oh, I'm like itching to move. I need to move. And that is what drove the behaviours. The behaviours themselves might have looked different, but the actual like drivers and the values are the same.
I love Jessica Ennis Hill for this. So this is like whenever a client's kind of like struggling with this, because maybe they were an athlete back in the day, or like I was in my fittest when I was at college or uni or whatever, and now they're trying to kind of live like that, but they're like 45, they've got 2 children and a full-time job. Like, it's different. So you do need to go through a new learning process. And Jessica Ennis Hill, she won a gold medal in the heptathlon at the Olympics. And it was hard. It was like her life goal to get to the gold medal. She did it. she then had a baby, and she was like, right, like after sort of she'd had the baby, she was like, right, I'm gonna go back to training now. I want to win a second gold medal. Started to try and do all the things that she did pre-pregnancy, and couldn't do it. Couldn't train as much. Ligaments were changed, like got injured more. And she was like, well, that's not going to work. So she had to learn a completely new way of doing the same thing she loved, like being that athlete, but in a different way. And she became a gold medal at the Olympics again for the second time. And she said she was more proud of that because she had to relearn everything in a completely different way. It was harder, but she still managed to get to the same goal she wanted to.
And I think my personal experience of that as well is sometimes the way you've learned to do it along the way, the first time, it worked. Wasn't actually even the most efficient way or the quickest way or the best way. You found a way that worked. And so actually this can be a bit of a silver lining where maybe you've got to find a better way. And it's forcing you to try. There's no one way to be fit and healthy, right? There's 100 million ways that you can do it. And it can be easy to get stuck in this mindset of there's only one way for me to keep my weight under control. There's only one way for me to stay fit. And that's not true. And actually, that's another limiting belief that can come and trip you up in future. So being forced to explore different options is actually another great part of this journey.
Yeah, I'm going through that myself right now. Like, I say like, you know, the one thing I wish is like really cliche that I had. It's just the knowledge as a 37-year-old. Like I wish I had that knowledge when I was 20 because I would not have done the stupid training modes and stuff that I did back then. And I would have probably just got my cardiovascular system like really like powerful then because I know that I enjoy running later on in life, like when in my mid-30s and stuff like that. And I would have probably not done so much weights and mixed it a little bit more. Like all of this stuff, but like I'm learning that now and I'm learning what's right for me now, what feels right for me now. But like hindsight's always going to be a wonderful thing, and you can learn from the things that worked well then and what didn't work well, and you can just always learn to do them better. And I feel like that's probably where I'm at right now. I feel like I've got a really good balance of training. Touch wood, don't get injured so much and things like that, but everything's moving along at like a good rate. But I certainly wouldn't try and train how I did when I was 20.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like learning from your own mistakes is like being smart, isn't it? But then learning from other people's mistakes is really being wise, and that's why coaching and books and stuff can be so effective. But I think even just coming back to, you know, so we've got people who lose weight, and then we see loads of clients where they lose weight and they've gained it back, and that's happened many times. We're saying pregnancy can be a complete shift in lifestyle and have a huge impact on like, oh, these same systems and habits maybe aren't as effective or need to change. But then I do believe there's other things that happen to clients when they go through that journey that maybe they've been successful right up to a point, and it can create, we were going to get into this a bit, the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, can create this like, what have we called it, the more PC version? The
peak of overconfidence.
The peak of overconfidence.
Yeah, I think if we can get, sorry, can you get it up on the screen?
But, you know...
So it's basically, again, like you were saying, Terry, a model of change and like learning.
This one or
yeah,
one?
that one's cool.
Yeah.
So when we think about like learning a new skill, there were these two psychologists called Dunning and Kruger, and you can go Google it and find the graph if you're listening. But basically there is like a journey that pretty much everyone, no matter what the skill is, they're going to go through this. You might not think you are, but it's probably because you're on what they call the peak of Mount Stupid. And I was like, guys, we're not going to start calling our clients stupid. Let's just have another think about this. So what we've looked at, like, what are the actual traits of each part of this, and we call it the peak of overconfidence. Do you want to explain what that looks like, Terry?
Yeah, so typically this is kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, and let's just say you're 30 pounds down and your goal was 40 pounds and you're doing things like in a great way. You've had this like almost like perfect weight loss journey, and it's getting to a point where maybe it's coming towards the end of your current coaching time and things like that, and you start to question, do you know what, I've got this, like I've done it, I've learned it, like I'm doing great, but ultimately the coach is there thinking no, like we need to go further than this, we need to do this next bit, the reverse diet, we need to get to the goal, there's a lot around the corner that you're going to struggle with. And it can be a difficult conversation, particularly with a client, because they are feeling great and they are in this place where they're like, you know, I've got this, I've learned it, thank you so much, you've helped me with everything I needed to know about weight loss. And the coach is there just feeling like, I don't want to knock you off of this, but we want to try and pull you down a little bit, because this isn't the end. This isn't the reality. Is there's a lot of learning to go, and probably a more difficult part of your weight loss journey as well. And so it literally is the thing that breaks my heart the most. I'm dead passionate about this, where if a client is looking to just go and try and do it themselves when they are on this peak of overconfidence, I need to have them understand that this is not where the journey ends, because there's this valley of despair around the corner, and likelihood it's not even going to be that long. It's probably going to be weeks, and you'll be there. We've had it actually recently, where a client within 3 to 4 weeks came back in because they were like, nope, it wasn't like, I realized I couldn't do that on my own yet, where they were literally so confident at the time before. It's a super difficult place as a coach to try and educate the clients that this, like, in order to get to where you need to be, the shortest path is to just keep doing what you're doing right now with us.
Yeah. And I think it's because that it seems so far away from your current experience. You are on top of the world. You're doing all the things. It's all working. And so why would it suddenly stop? And it might be the stuff that we've talked about today about like metabolic adaptation or a bit of complacency, but it can also be life stuff.
I think it's mainly life stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's the positives can be it, like, you know, Christmas, the holidays, maybe a little bit excessive drinking, all the really like birthdays, big celebrations. They can really throw you off if you don't really know your blueprint to getting back on track. But we've had loads of clients that have come back through grief. And that's a really difficult one to sort of swallow, but it's just like they've lost a parent or somebody they really care about, and they've just gone back to turn into food, and that weight's come back on. And that's really difficult, because, you know, we'll take someone who becomes a graduate and they'll maintain for a couple of months and they've learned all the skills, but they haven't worked with us going through a period of grief, and they don't know how they're really going to deal with it as well, and haven't had the tools. And I think that's, you know, when you look at that study that we bring up, which is 85 to 95% of people who lose weight gain it all back over the next 2 years. I was on a call with clients the other day, and I was like, hey, if say your weight loss journey takes you a year, I was like, but then you really need to maintain for about another 2 to 3 years afterwards. So let's say it's a 3-year journey. I was like, that isn't sexy or what anyone wants to hear, that this is going to take 3 years. But I was like, just think about what would happen over a 3-year period. 1, you had all the hardships of going through losing weight, but then 2, you've now maintained for 2 years. So like over that 3-year period, you've had 3 Christmases, 3 birthdays yourself, friends, families, birthdays, parties. You've probably got sick multiple times. Maybe your kids have got sick. Maybe somebody in the family or somebody you care about has died. You've gone through a period of grief. Hopefully not, but like it is life. You're such a more resilient person to say, like, I can continue to go and do this for the rest of my life. And that's...
And you've put all those skills to the test. You haven't just been like, oh, I'm sure I'll be fine. You've actually tested, like, how will I react? What have I got in my toolbox I can draw on?
That's resilience. And that is what you need to be lifelong success. To be successful with your health and fitness for the rest of your life, you need to have resilience. And resilience is going to mean you've been tested.
Yeah.
And
actually, we often say the clients who have, quote unquote, the perfect weight loss, we're like, oh no, because if it all goes swimmingly and it all goes to plan and they have no challenges, they haven't actually learned that resilience, or they haven't had to fill their toolbox with stuff that they can draw out in future. So we almost want people to have a little bit of a rough time.
You wanna have it yourself. You wanna know, oh shit, like I really messed up this weekend, or I went on holiday and on vacation and way overdid it, but I came back and got back on track and lost that weight again. Okay, I'll learn. Like that sting, that pain is like, okay, I'll learn from that. You know, so it's sometimes we look at these parts of a weight loss journey or as like really negative, but they're just painful lessons. And as much as we'll try and coach you to avoid those lessons, like that's what a coach will do, try and help you sidetrack them. Sometimes you have just got to go through it yourself to really understand the blueprint for you.
Yeah, it's one thing having the knowledge there, and it's another thing altogether, like putting it into action in different places. So even if someone can go through the perfect weight loss journey with us, where they do lose weight, they reverse diet, they maintain, but if they haven't had any of those things go on, actually applying that in a different scenario can be a completely different thing. And so that's why it is super important to go through these like adversities over a longer period of time, because you're just putting to the test like the skills that you've got in different scenarios. And once you've done that, like that's when you truly know, like I've got this.
Yeah. I mean, so just going back to this, because you mentioned that lady come back after a couple of weeks recently. We had Tracy Porter, one of our grads, on the other day, and she said she's done 4 months of coaching, left, and the next part of this graph is the valley. So if you kind of look at it, it's like a big spike up, isn't it? You get getting
The confidence peak.
the confidence peak, not the peak. I'm not stupid. And then there's this like sharp decline to where you end up in the valley of despair. And to be honest, people like Tracy and some of the clients that have come back, they've actually had, I would say, really high levels of humility, or it's just been that painful that like I need to just go and ask for help.
Yeah.
But I also know that there's a lot of people that maybe there's too much shame wrapped in that, and they don't have the humility, and that's what we're always trying to avoid, is you ending up in this.
Not having to have that inner battle.
That valley of despair. Or if you end up in that valley of despair because you are going through a difficult time, you've got the coach there to keep guiding you through it. So you go through the valley, but you're being guided, and then it builds your resilience with support.
I think it was really interesting chatting to Tracy, because like we didn't use this model with her at all, or like
she's
show
gone
it.
through
But
it.
I mean, that wording probably was bang on of how she was feeling.
Yeah.
She just felt like she'd gone so far backwards, not just physically, but like mentally. All those like negative thoughts had come back, and she didn't know how to get herself back out of a rut. And so she actually said, I've realised I don't need to have a coach forever, but I actually realised I really like it, and I really want to, because I like knowing I've got that somebody in my corner, somebody who knows me, somebody who gets all of what's been going on in my life and can just, foresee those things. And I think that's the beauty of having a coach, is they've always got like binoculars on your life, and they can like see in the distance and be like, oh, hey, Tracy, by the way, this is going to happen, so let's do this. And it's like somebody's got your back before you even know you need them to have your back.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many things as well, especially with coaching and Body Smart, where the coaches are so well equipped to deal with all of this other stuff that may not have even come to fruition during their like kind of normal weight loss journey with us, but they're well equipped to help you bounce back from these situations or move through them in a slightly less tricky way. And you will never know what that felt like unless you were there having that coach there. So it's super important to know that any advice we're giving with like finishing your journey and being here and for the right length of time to really go through this, it's where you'll come out the other side and really be able to just manage this for life, rather than getting stuck in that same pitfall you've always been in.
Yeah, and I think it's really key to just touch on the fact, like feeling that you can manage it for life. The grads I have the most confidence in are not the ones who are like, oh, I've got this now for life. They're the ones who are like, oh, I've realised I'm going to have to work at this and like just be a little bit conscious of it for the rest of my life. Like, yes, perfect. Because if you think, right, that's it, done, you're kind of still up on that peak of overconfidence. It's just a different peak. Like maybe it's the next mountain range over. So actually, when you realise this is an endless learning journey, this is an endless kind of like, how can I be more resilient? What other skills can I learn? It is enlightening to do that. And if you take that approach, you're going to be good. If you think, oh yeah, I'm done. I've done my 2 years. Jaymie said 2 years. That's fine. Probably not the answer.
Yeah, you want to keep that like curiosity there, and it's that which keeps you learning. A lot of what you will have built will be unconscious at that point. You won't even have to think about it. But as long as you're constantly thinking about that next thing, or how to do things a little better, or what's around the corner, or how can I navigate this thing, and you constantly have those questions there, you're going to keep learning, you're going to keep developing. Because I mean, us as coaches, we see the industry, the research, like everything changes rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we have that, like you will get left behind very quickly. So it's something which we would try and impart onto to all of our clients. And you're right, like the grads who are the ones who are maintaining for their, like they're the ones who are like coming to us and going, I want to know how to deadlift better. Like, I want to know how to do this. Or I've got this thing and it's a dream, but I reckon I can do it. And like when you constantly hear those questions coming at you, it is literally the best feeling in the world, because you know that they are in that mindset that's never going to change. Now.
Yeah,
You've made a full-blown identity shift.
Yeah.
And I think also like, I mean, I'm trying to think like, how long did you do yoga before you identified as a yogi?
Oh, that's a very good question. I guess because of the whole point of yoga is this. So it's not like about a label, but it is just an ongoing journey. And I remember when I started teaching yoga, I was like, okay, I'm fully aware. The physical side of it, I am a geek for. Like, I am all down for the anatomy and like alignment and how like this is going to help that. But I know the philosophy is something that I need to like just keep on the back burner, and constantly it's going to keep going. And it is still going. Like, it is still a journey. And we were, again, on the pregnancy episode, we're talking about like acceptance. It's a really big part of like yogic philosophy. I mean, that's maybe like 12 years after I qualified as a yoga teacher, did I actually really embody that pillar of yoga. And it's never going to end. It's like all of those pillars are part of your life, and that's kind of the whole point of it. And so I think if you can take that kind of approach to your health, your fitness, your mindset, like, it's not something that you get to just stop. Well, you can.
You can, but just to make that identity shift as well, I think it takes years, because it's a complete change in how you view yourself. And that doesn't just happen in 60 days or 90 days. You know, for you to completely change how you see yourself in the core. It takes sets and reps for, I feel like years, you know, to really make that change. Like I would say, like, when I started Body Smart, I would never say I was a business owner, even though I had a business. It probably took years before I would start saying, oh yeah, like, you know what I mean, just to really have stepped into that identity of what it is. And I think even when you first become a personal trainer, you kind of say it, but you kind of doubt. Like, you know, if you just went and done like a short course, like, you know, you kind of feel like you want to, and even to just say it with a little bit more pride. I think that's a part as well, isn't it? Like, if you've just like lost loads of weight, you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm a fit and healthy person. You kind of like want to have stepped into that for years. You
came to me and you're like, I really feel like we're a real business now.
Doing it for 10 years with 50 people in the team. I literally did say those words to Terry. Like, I feel like we're becoming like a real business now, the way the org chart's changing now. But yeah, after a decade, you know what I mean? So I think more what I was trying to get at there is making a full-blown identity shift and to have, unconscious competence. It takes time, and respecting the fact that it's going to take time, and that's fine as well. That's good. But that also just to have that carrot dangled of like, you've got to just keep doing the work until it really does get to that point. And when it gets to that point, you'll know, because you'll just be doing it without thinking.
And also, if you've made that mindset shift, you will be looking at like, what's the next horizon? You won't have that closed mindset of, I'm done. I think that's a really key indicator of whether you're really done.
I think with our clients, like, a good like litmus test for them is to think of if they can ask themselves a question, like, is it harder for me to just maintain my weight, or do I have to think about this still? And the question is, they're probably not done yet in that sense, because when you think about any other analogy, like, for example, driving a car, it's really difficult to start with, but then you're so unconscious with it at the point where you are so unconsciously competent, it's now harder for you to forget how to drive than it is to just get in and just drive it, right? So that's where you want to get to with your health and fitness. And if you're still in a place where it doesn't feel that easy and that unconsciously competent to just maintain where you are, live as a healthy person, there's probably still a lot more work to do.
Yeah, because we were saying, like, actually, if you, for any of us, if we were to gain weight by accident, like, it wouldn't just happen. It would have to be something weird, like something happened to change our lifestyle, or we were on holiday. But even then, most of us would feel like after a few days of overindulging, I'm certainly like, oh, I just want some vegetables. Or like, you know, your body tells you, can we go back to normal, please? Because that is such a set baseline. And so if you're in that place where it would feel weird to put weight on, that's when you know, okay, I've probably shifted enough.
And I think for any of the Body Smart clients or grads even listening, this is why, like, this year we brought out the Body Smart for Life program, which is a much more low intensive sort of programming, but it's to make sure that you've got that insurance package there of the sense of like, we want you to become a graduate, and we help you develop all the skills, habits, and get the right belief system in place. But we've just got this Body Smart for Life where you can stay for another year in much more that the accountability is dialed right down, the communication is dialed right down, but you've got a coach in your back pocket just for everything that we've spoke about in this episode to just keep you taking those steps and really make that full-blown identity shift.
Yeah, for whenever like things happen, there's someone there, but it gives you a lot of that chance to just lean on the skills, the knowledge, the actions that you've built along the way, but be able to put them into different scenarios. And then you've also got that coach there for the accountability when and if you need it. And that just allows you to build that competence to an unconscious level, and really get to that place where you feel like, yes, there's always learning to go, but it's now more difficult for you to go back than it is for you to stay where you are.
Yeah. The other thing that I know our clients love about this part of the program is when you're not focusing on weight loss, there's so many other things that you're like, oh, that round table is actually really interesting. I'm going to go and like learn about that part of my mindset, because you have the space in your brain now, because you're not trying to just focus on weight loss. So it is part of that ongoing journey, like we were just discussing, where when you've really made that mindset shift into somebody who's like lifelong health and fitness is your identity, you can't help but just want to learn more about it. And it gives you those like little extra channels to explore, which is kind of fun.
Yes, and coaches absolutely love it as well when we've got to go and build this like really unique program, because it's like the client wants to explore this like different type of training and things like that. Like we love it because it's we love the weight loss, we love that side of things, and the fundamental foundational pieces. But when we start to get to explore and branch out and really use all of our skills and knowledge as well to help the clients, like it fills us. So you're always going to get like the best out of your coach as well.
Yeah, you certainly do get the best part of all the coaches, but we have got a closing tradition on this podcast. Or it's not closing, but we've just been throwing it in there, haven't we, Stacey? Which is, if there was one thing, because it changes every time you'll be on, that people need to cut the BS with when it comes to this episode, what would you say it is?
It's the peak of overconfidence. It's the one thing that they need to make sure that they go through that and understand that if you're feeling confident, if you're feeling happy, that's awesome. It's great. But if you're not at your goal, if you haven't reversed that, if you haven't maintained, if you're not at unconscious competence, you're not done yet.
I love it. Yeah. To go and look at the Dunning-Kruger effect on Google and make sure you're not on that peak.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Terry, and sharing your wisdom with us. If anybody wants to come and search you out on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok. On Coach Anderson UK is my tagline.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, what can I say? Coach Terry always has the wisdom, always has the truth bombs, and just like all of our coaches, says it with no BS. He says it with love, but he's also going to get you where you need to go. And he reminds me very much of our very own Coach Luke in that way. We have got an episode with Coach Luke, which is episode 88. If you haven't had a listen to it yet, Luke is just... I don't know how he does it. He just has like all these one-liners that he should have been a preacher or something, I think. Just comes out with just really perfectly worded little tidbits that stick with you. So episode 88 is a great one. If you need to cut the BS with yourself, you need to take some action, but you're not quite sure how, go and get Luke's voice in your head. It's going to help.